sixes. 10, 9, 8, 76ers.
What's going on, everyone? This is UK 76ers. My name is Ben Glassport, and last week the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Indiana Pacers by 130 points to 114. Right, and I think off the bat, the obvious thing would be, well, this was a week ago, and I do apologise, it's coming a bit later. I'm still figuring out what I want to do with regards to this in terms of the future. I'm considering maybe doing a end of week sort of roundup thing, or continuing on with doing, a post-game analysis for each game. But because of the amount of time I have available to myself now, things will have to be adjusted. I'm still figuring it out. I mean, if I'm going to be frank, some of it is a bit of laziness as well, but I think that's just partly because I've been just focused in on getting used to my new job. But long story short, you needn't worry, there will be content, some sort of content rolling itself out regularly, I hope. Well, I know there will be. But anyway, so obviously this was last week, good win and all that. But before we do go into it, we'll just quickly roll out the usual sort of announcements. USA Sports merch, again, supplying some fantastic merch for all of your American sports teams from all the big four leagues. Similarly, Visible provided me some awesome stats, easy to use, easy to interpret, and easy to access. Just check their site out. Both of these pages will be linked in the description below. And we'll just dive straight in to what was an emphatic win for the Sixers, a 16-point win, but there was at some point it was 29 points ahead, and we just dominated them from start to finish. We had the Embiid-Turner matchup, and we know historically Embiid has had the better of Miles Turner, and I do think Miles Turner is a good centre in his own right. It's just Embiid is next level, and he's going to dominate most centres in the NBA, if not all, and Miles Turner was just the latest guy to fall victim to him. But on top of that, also, you have Domantas Sabonis, who's arguably the best player, him or Brogdon, I guess. It depends which way you lie on that. I personally would choose Brogdon. But at the very least, Sabonis is a huge part of their offense, and you had Sabonis just really struggled to get anywhere because he's sort of plays in that mid-rangey to post area, and unfortunately for him, that means one of, Embiid or maybe Simmons or even Harris. I know Harris wasn't playing, but we match up well against Sabonis, and that makes life a hell of a lot more difficult for him, and I do think he really struggled in this game, and it showed because I just didn't really think, well, he just didn't have a good game at the end of, really. But as I alluded to before, Tobias Harris didn't play, so that meant Mike Scott started, and I thought, for all intents and purposes, Mike Scott had a pretty decent game. Look, he wasn't going to get too many shots, but the shots he did have, he drained, and he had some nice little hustle plays, and that's all you want from the guy. You just want him to drain his shots, hustle, bring that dog, bring that, hard man to the court, and make life difficult for the Pacers, and he did that. But the key takeaway for me was Shake Milton, and we have seen Shake Milton. He's averaging 13-14 points a game, which is pretty solid, but what we wanted was a bit more efficiency, especially from three, because we know the efficiency he's running at, I want to say, is about 33% or so. I don't think that's really reflective of what he could be, because I think really he should be operating at 38% plus. Admittedly, some of his shots are off the dribble, which are inherently harder shots, but even then you'd back the guy to make them because he is a very good three-point shooter. So he struggled this season, really, in my opinion at the very least. Struggled for consistency, and also struggled just in the usual definition of that word, in that some games he just seems ineffective, can't really get anything going, and we struggle. And the overarching issue with the Philadelphia 76ers is bench points, and Shake Milton is not the huge issue in that. And for anything, he's one of the few shining lights in bench points. But when he doesn't perform, this bench isn't going to do too much better to make up for the fact that Shake Milton isn't quite getting up to speed. But he had a fantastic game, probably the best game he's had this season. One of them at the very least. He finished on 26 points, 9 of 14 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, which is exactly what you want to see from the guy. Just progress. And we saw in the Utah game, and I'll have a separate video for the Utah game, that this form could continue, but I want to just talk specifically about what he did in this Pacers game. Now, like I said, bench points has been a huge issue for the Sixers, and as a result, that means because I don't like Doc's rotations, I still don't like him. I still think he hasn't quite mastered staggering our players, our starting five, and our three big stars. And as a result, when those stars go off and the bench comes on, that's when teams get in us. That's when they get the runs going, and that's when we struggle. And we end up in a huge deficit, or we don't kick on, or we let our lead slip because this bench doesn't quite get to do what we want it to do. But that being said, last week, spearheaded by Shea Milton, this bench got the job done, and that's why we cruised to victory. That's why we could get, put all our bench players in almost the whole fourth quarter, because this bench pulled their weight. Now, it's really good to see, don't get me wrong, because Milton obviously did well, as I alluded to. Korkmaz had 19 points. Howard, I think, had a pretty solid game. It was just, what I think about Dwight Howard, but he just did the fundamentals well. And that's the issue. He either does the fundamentals well, and that's when he's valuable, or he does the fundamentals awfully, awfully badly. And that's when I get annoyed. Has this changed my mind on Dwight Howard? No, not really. Has this changed my mind on Furkan Korkmaz? No, not really. But it's good to see, and maybe they can change their mind if they continue this and do it consistently, but I don't think they're going to do it consistently. And whilst it is important, and you've got to appreciate the fact that this bench has performed in this game, I still want changes. I still want trades, and I've said before countless times, I assume there will be trades. I'll be shocked if there wasn't. But we can't lull ourselves into believing that just because we've had a couple good games with this bench, that this bench will be good for us for the whole season. And especially in the playoffs, because it's a different beast, the playoffs. And I'm not sure if Furkan Korkmaz, we saw last season, he really struggled against the Celtics. I mean, everyone did, but he especially really struggled. Milton was up for it. Well, I think he's playoff ready. Maxey isn't playoff ready. Not an indictment on Tyrese Maxey, it's just he's not playoff ready yet. Matisse Thybulle can be playoff ready if he's got someone that can cover up his offensive inadequacies. And what I mean by this is that defensively, he's a playoff player. Offensively, he's not. So what do you need to do? And I've said it countless times before, you need to mask the fact that he can't produce on offense consistently by making sure that people surrounding him are adequate shooters, are adequate playmakers, are adequate offensive talents, so that, okay, we've got Matisse Thybulle in the corner for you, need to use him, but at least we've got 4 other guys on the floor who can create their own shot, who can do their own thing and get us points. And that's the thing with Matisse, and that's the thing with our bench in general. There's just not enough there on the offensive end. But that's a whole different story. At the end of the day, we won a blowout game against a Pacers team which are pretty good. Should we expect to win? Yeah, probably. But this is still a very good team. So we talked about how Mike Scott started obviously fantastically well. Miles Turner, Embiid, no contest. But I hate to be complaining all the time, but Doug McDermott kept getting easy looks. And it's always people of this mould that, 40% plus 3-point shooters. It's just basically all they've got is 3-point shooting. The likes of McDermott, the likes of Bertans, the likes of Ellington, who keep finding ways to get open looks far easier than, anyone should allow them to have. They're lights out shooters if given enough space, and we don't close out to them. Similarly, Malcolm Brogdon in the pick and roll, and despite the win and despite how good we did play, and I will talk about the positive soon, it is still an annoyance, the drop coverage we have on pick and roll plays. There's, obviously I get it, because if you go up and then the centre has an easy alley-oop to finish off, but there's got to be a way to combat this, because when we do pick and rolls, it's never this easy. We can't execute like this. Every team against us can. And Malcolm Brogdon in that mid-range with those floater game, you might as well just gift him 2 points. You might as well not bother if you're going to keep doing this drop coverage and keep defending the pick and roll just poorly in the grand scheme of things. And that's why you're top of people like Doug McDermott, those 3-point sort of dead-eye shooters. You've also got guards, ball-handling guards, who can execute in the pick and roll that have so much joy against us. Your Jordan Clarksons of the world, your Trey Youngs, your Colin Sextons, your Darius Garlands, who've seen it all before. And it's because of their ability to penetrate and drive and to get what they want in the pick and roll. This is something that needs to be addressed. But finally, we'll move on to the positives. And this is spearheaded by Shea Milton. I want to dive in the bit ball what he did. He had this wonderful 4-point play which really set the tone for the rest of his game. Look, do I think he'd still have a similar sort of performance if he did make that 4-point play? Of course I do. But we know in basketball, we know that sometimes that first shot is hugely important for your momentum, how you carry yourself for the rest of the game. And a 4-point play is a fantastic way to get started. And we talk about his 3-point shoot, but how about the way he goes to the rim? He's ambidextrous seemingly when he goes to the rim, and you have someone like Miles Turner, who, the best shot blocker in the league arguably, him or Gobert. And you have to have that fearlessness to be like, well, I'm not going to let you deter me from going to the rim, going to the hoop and getting my points. Is such a refreshing sight to see, and it's intelligent finishing as well. You can't. You got to let it hit off the backboard immediately to avoid any sort of blocks, so that if he does hit it, it's a goaltend. And it's just that intelligence that he seems to have around the rim, that where he contorts his body, because not he's an efficient finisher at the rim, and the stats back it up. He's one of the most efficient finishers at the rim in the NBA, I believe. That might have changed since I last saw that stat, but if you're talking about, when comparing it directly to people of his height and his frame and his build, he's easily one of the best of that 6'3", 6'4" frame. So that was fantastic to see. And the reserves obviously did well. Korkmaz seems to have something going on against the Pacers. He loves playing. We saw what he did in the not even the reverse fixture. Yeah, it was the reverse fixture in Indiana. He just hits his threes, and so you guys know I'm not the biggest Furkan Korkmaz fan, but when his 3-point shot is dropping, it is just going to be dropping all night. And I think that's just what happened today. I'm still not big on the guy, but of course it's always advantageous when your guy's shot is dropping, even if he might not be your favourite player ever. And I want him to succeed. I would love him to turn around and just prove me wrong and be like, I'm part of this rotation. I can be a useful player in the team. I don't think he will, but I want to be proved wrong. And more games like this, the better, in my opinion. And what I did like was this lineup that this is when we really started making inroads in the second quarter. Embiid, Simmons, Korkmaz, Shake, and Matisse. And I loved that lineup. I thought that was fantastic. We had Korkmaz as the 4. We had Simmons, being able to play make so the likes of Shake and Korkmaz can get their shots away. And similarly, it meant that Milton can do some playmaking while Simmons goes off the ball, potentially as the screener and the pick and roll, creating out the pick and roll, or indeed just rolling to the hoop and getting his own points. I thought it was a really, really nice lineup. And of course we talk defensively. When you have Simmons and Matisse on the floor, they're always going to struggle. So if we can have that Matisse, and that's what I've alluded to before, if you can find a way to have Matisse and Ben Simmons on the floor at the same time, defensively you're going to do fantastically well. Similarly with a Joel Embiid, I always forget about how good Joel Embiid is defensively, but when you have those three on the court and you can find a way to also make sure you still get points, you can still score, it's not one-dimensional, that it's not easy to predict how we're going to play our basketball on the offensive end, then we can really make inroads into teams, we can really hurt them. And I think this lineup was a prime example of that. And of course, you can make some chops and changes. You can maybe include Seth Curry, you may include Mike Scott, Tobias Harris, of course, when he's back. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that lineup, and I really hope to see more of it. And I'm sure we will further down the line, because I'm sure Doc would have seen just how potent that lineup was. There was a really lovely play as well, Shake Milton, this time the facilitator. Of course, he did his scoring, but he also did a decent bit of facilitating, which I think is something he needs to up in his game. We know he's a solid facilitator, but can you get to that next level where you're averaging, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 assists a game? And I think that's possible. And there was this lovely lob to Matisse who finished. And look, we all love it when Matisse scores, because everyone loves Matisse. He's just a fantastic guy. And I think, you always have that you always romanticize the players that you draft yourself. So him and Tyrese, whenever they do anything, is absolutely fantastic. And it was a lovely lob finished by Matisse. And then we enter that third quarter, and we were slow out the gate. And I think we were in danger of letting that lead slip away, like we so often do. We sleepwalk into letting teams back into games which they shouldn't really be back in. And it looked for all the world. There's a really clever timeout by Doc, and it's as simple as that, just making sure the rut stops, by making sure you can gather your thoughts, gather your ideas, and be like, well, this isn't acceptable, let's change this about, but this is okay, let's keep with this, and just persist with that. It really is as simple as that. I mean, it's basketball 101, call timeouts when you're struggling, and that's what he did. Stop the rut, we gathered ourselves, and we just kept going back at the Pacers, and then their run that they slowly chipped into our lead, that completely evaporated, and we all but secured the win in this third quarter after leading by 55-72, leading by 17 at the half. So, but you talk about how do we stop runs happening? How do we stop being lackadaisical? How do we stop letting teams get back into games? It really is as easy as giving the ball to Joel Embiid. Now, I've often criticised, I can't be two-faced, I've often criticised how sometimes our offence is one-dimensional. But if Embiid's in the form he is and no one can guard him, well, maybe that's your best option. I think teams will figure out how to, not figure him out, he'll still get his points, but it'll make it more difficult for him. And they've tried throwing the doubles and triple teams. And because his passing out of the post is so good now, I can't believe how much it's improved. I don't think it gets enough credit from people, the mainstream media, I guess. People who watch Philadelphia 76ers regularly will realise how his passing out the post has severely improved. And he's been fantastic at that, and especially when the likes of Danny Green and Seth Curry's shot is falling. Seth Curry's shot falls more often than not, but Danny Green's shot has been doing pretty well recently as well. It makes so much more difficult. So we went on 11-0 run, that then went to a 15-0 run, that went to a 20-2 run, and that was basically the game. And we talk about the fourth quarter, the usual suspects coming in, getting game time. Tony Bradley had a few good minutes. Dwight Howard had the start of the fourth, and again was really good, really energetic. It was just, that's all you wanted. It was just workman-like performance, and it wasn't as if it was from beyond. No one overperformed. It's just stuff I expect from most of them. Like, do I expect Trey Milton to get 24 points every game? No, of course I don't. But do I expect just some sort of productivity? You're looking at, your 10 to 15 points a game. Absolutely, I do. And it really is as simple as that. And there was this. The defense is. We know how good this team can be on defense, and we've seen sometimes that they aren't to the level we want them to be. But there was this period of time in that third quarter when we went on that ridiculous run. The Pacers didn't have a field goal for 5 minutes of play. 5 minutes. It's astonishing what this defense can do when it's switched on. And the beauty is that I do think when push comes to shove, when the real moments come in the postseason or against your more challenging teams, I do think this defense comes alive, and it will be so good to know that we've got that in our locker, that we can always throw Ben Simmons or Matisse Thybulle on whoever and give them a real. They'll struggle. I mean, the stats are all there that they will struggle when guarded by Ben Simmons or Matisse Thybulle. So yeah, that fourth quarter came. The Pacers had a bit of a run, but it really wasn't much to shout about, and we finished strongly with 43% from three compared to the Pacers getting 27%. That was the big thing, 3-point shooting, and I will talk about that in just a moment. Simmons had 18, 6, 2 and 2, and Embiid had 24, 13 and 5. Mike Scott had a nice 11 points, 3 of 3 from the field, really efficient 11 of course. And the 3-point shooting, it's a weird one because we are one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league, but at the same time I think we have the assets that the 3-point shooters we have should really on paper have us higher in that ranking. But here's a couple issues why. Danny Green's very streaky. Like I said, recently he's been very good, and all credit to him, and long may it continue. But he is a streaky. We know that he's an all or nothing guy who will hit everything or miss everything. Seth Curry doesn't take enough shots in my opinion, and his trigger's a bit. He'll often pump fake and then try to get into that mid-range. Just shoot your lights out. Korkmaz, less said the better. Milton, I think he's just recovering his shot. Embiid's been solid, but the thing is, don't get me wrong, he's been shooting better from three statistically, but it's also because his attempts have gone down. He's taking sensible shots so that he's hitting 1 of 2, maybe 2 of 3, 2 of 4 game, rather than 2 of 6 or something like that back last season. But it's something that needs to be worked on, and it will be worked on when we make the trades. But that was the Pacers game. Video obviously will be coming tonight for you. The Jazz game video I'm hoping will come tomorrow. No, I'm not hoping, it will be coming tomorrow. Like I said, thanks very much for being patient with me, guys. I will have a bit more consistently and have a routine in place once I figure myself out with regards to my job. But anyway, that's all from me. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.